Coventry tonight. Robert Vansickle, Christy, Isom, and Dave Page. Nice to have you here. And Christy, since you're the captain, anytime you want to push that stop button, just do so, and we'll find out what the first category is going to be. And we will start out with sports. Usually brings a smile on everybody's face. In 1919, a horse named Sir Barton became the first to win what racing series that includes the Kentucky Derby, the Preakness, and the Belmont Stakes?
The Triple Crown.
That's it. Congressman Jack Kemp, who may be running for president today, once did his running for what NFL team in upstate New York?
Buffalo.
Buffalo, right. Bills. Count Dracula probably disliked what game that requires wooden or metal stakes, as well as U-shaped or circular objects originally forged by blacksmiths. What are we looking for?
Horseshoes.
Horseshoes is right. First European Special Olympics for the handicapped were held in 1985. In what capital city of the Republic of Ireland?
Dublin.
That's it. A young stag, especially an elk, is often described with what word that suggests a pointed cleat on the sole of a baseball shoe?
Spike.
A what?
A spike.
A spike is right. One of the Heavenly Twins, Castor, was once a horse trainer, but Pollux was noted for what skill that might compare him to Mark Breland or Sugar Ray Leonard?
Boxing.
Boxer is absolutely right, and you got them all. That's a good start for you. Now, let us go over to team number 2 and meet everybody from Chardon. First of all, Kathy Dorka, Brian MacMillan, the captain, and John Jesenko. And Brian, as we did with Christy, anytime you are ready now, you push the button, and we'll find out what category you will start with tonight. Okay, we end up with what's missing. And we'll find out what is missing now as we move along with your first round. The 3 B's of competitive swimming are the backstroke, breaststroke, and what third stroke it would appeal to a lepidopterist?
Butterfly.
That's it. Paris and Lyon are 2 of the 3 largest cities in France. Which one has been omitted? The one that lent its name to the French national anthem?
Marseille.
That's it. North and South Carolina were 2 of the last 3 English colonies to be settled in this country. What was the last of the original 13 named for another king?
Georgia.
Georgia's right. Byzantium and Constantinople were names given successfully to a city in Turkey. What is its present name?
Constantinople.
No, it's Istanbul, not Constantinople, as the song says. If you were writing in history of the original 13 colonies, you would mention proprietary and charter, and also discuss what third type of colony ruled by a governor who represented the king. Looking for a royal colony. Catherine of Aragon and Jane Seymour are 2 wives of Henry VIII. Name the wife who was the mother of Elizabeth I.
Boleyn.
Anne Boleyn is right. Some tough questions and 40 points for Chardon after round number 1. And we come back now to team number 3, visiting from Firelands in Oberlin. Robin Gross, Jennifer Hauer, and Amy Fritz. Okay, Jennifer, anytime you're ready. Let's see what your first category will be tonight. Push the stop button, and we come up with literature. Okay, here we go. The surname of English composer Peter Warlock suggests he's a male version of what supernatural sisters who keep the cauldron bubbling in Macbeth?
Witches.
That's it. In a Robert Frost poem, death comes for a hired man, but it comes for what kind of clergyman in Willa Cather's famous novel set in the Southwest? Looking for Archbishop. I Had 3 Wives might have made a good title for a personal memoir by what ancient Roman who would have listed these wives as Cornelia, Pompeii, and Calpurnia?
Caesar.
Julius Caesar. In his poem, The Bells, Edgar Allan Poe makes the sleigh bells silver and the funeral bells of what other metal whose chemical symbol is Fe?
Iron.
Right. Louisa May Alcott wrote a book about Aunt Joe's scrap bag, but who was the American poet of Chicago fame who wrote the American Song Bag?
Tennessee Williams.
No, Carl Sandburg. Richard Wright wrote the novel Native Son, but the book Notes of a Native Son was the work of what other black American writer, the author of Go Tell It on the Mountain and The Fire Next Time? Okay, some tough ones there, too. James Baldwin was the author we were looking for. And 30 points for Firelands after round number 1. We'll be right back with our very fast lightning round, but first of all, teams, remember at the end of tonight's match, we will check the ladder of our Super Bowl scoreboard, and at the end of the season, remember the 3 teams with the top score will join us for an Academic Challenge Super Bowl, and so far the highest point totals have been these: St. Paul and Padua, followed by Holy Name. And we'll be back after a word from Ohio Edison and the Illuminating Company.
You
sure been quiet lately, PJ. You've been thinking about electricity again. Want to wire up the bunkhouse, don't you? Get a TV.
Most of us don't have to give electricity a second thought. It's always ready when we need it. Just a few dollars a day to do everything.
Or even an electric blanket. Oh, boy. For him and his pony. Boy, oh. No, PJ, don't.
In 23 years, Academic Challenge has seen some of Northern Ohio's finest students come and go. But where have they gone? Let's see. Thomas Aldrich took the challenge in 1975. With a law degree from Harvard, Tom is now an attorney with Thompson, Hine, and Flory. Phyllis Goldfarb took the challenge in 1973. After earning degrees from Brandeis, Harvard, Yale, and Georgetown, she's a professor of law at Boston College. The Illuminating Company and Ohio Edison applaud the scholars of yesterday and today because education, like electricity, is the power of the future.
Before we continue with more questions, let's have a look at tonight's schools participating on Academic Challenge. Earth Science teacher and team advisor Chuck Good tells us the Coventry community supported the school with $54,000 in scholarships last year. He also notes that the school and community is anxiously awaiting the next space shuttle flight because the Coventry chemistry experiment will be on board. The Coventry faculty boasts of having the 1986 Ohio Teacher of the Year and the 1984 Ohio Counselor of the Year. Chardon High School was founded 80 years ago in the town now called Ohio's snow capital. Academic Challenge advisor Helene Rose, an English teacher, tells us Chardon is one of the few schools around that still has Friday night sock hops. Chardon's band won the coveted Spirit Award at this year's competition, and its thespian club had 5 members in the all-Ohio troupe that performed in the International Thespian Conference. Firelands High School in Oberlin has nearly 550 students in grades 9 through 12. Team advisor Joan Meyer, who teaches Spanish, tells us the Firelands FFA students produce more Grand Champion steers than any other Lorain County school. And the district's bus drivers successfully compete in the annual state bus rodeos. The Firelands varsity football and basketball and the girls varsity volleyball teams were district champions last season. Now it's time for the lightning round. So, Paul, what are the rules?
All 3 teams will compete in a visual free-for-all lasting 1 minute. The first team to ring its bell for each item will be recognized. The right answer gets you 10 points, but we'll take away 10 for incorrect answers or failure to reply.
This category round is a list of animals, each of which has a name that is usually spelled with just 3 letters. Please identify each type of 3-letter animal from the following clues. And here is clue number 1, everybody. Check your monitors and tell me the answer, if you will. Coventry.
Fly.
Fly is right. The only mammal that can fly. Chardon.
Bat.
Right. Character in Peter Pan. Firelands?
Dog.
Dog, right. A male sheep. Chardon.
Ram.
A ram is right. A bird sacred to the Greek goddess Athena. I didn't see which one. Firelands.
Owl.
An owl, right. The rodent blamed for carrying the plague. Firelands.
Rat.
Right. How about another name for the African wild beast? Firelands.
New.
New is right. A bird that nicknamed Senator Rockefeller of West Virginia. Chardon.
Bird.
Jay. A female deer is Firelands?
Doe.
A doe. An animal that brought riches to Dick Whittington was Firelands.
Cat.
A cat is right. An insect that is a source of formic acid. Coventry.
Ant.
Right. And according to Mark Twain, the only animal that blushes, Firelands,
Man.
is man. And that's the end of the round. Remember now, at the end of the season, the 3 teams with the highest scores will be back to compete with each other for some very impressive prizes. The top 3 teams at the end of the season will each receive a computer. Computer prizes are provided by Apple Computer Incorporated and Holcomb's Educational Materials. Today, there are more apples in schools than any other computer, which may just be the best reason to buy an Apple for home. There may never be a better time. In addition to their Apple computer, the winners of our Super Bowl program will also receive a special championship trophy. We'll be back in a moment after this from the Energy Makers.
The Energy Makers bring you the power of the future.
All right, let's recap now with the lightning round did for the scores of the teams, and then it's back to our electronic challenge board. Paul?
In this round, each question is worth 20 points. But now you may also lose 20 points for incorrect answers or 10 points for failure to reply. Any team answering all 8 questions correctly will gain 25 bonus points. The categories in this electronic challenge round will be history, literature, says who, science, associations, potluck, famous men and women, where in the world, and letter perfect.
Okay, Paul, thank you very much. Back to Coventry now. And Christy, anytime you want to stop the category, we'll find out what we have. And we have associations coming up this time. Whatever that is. We'll find out in a minute. An axe and blue ox are items you would associate with what fiction character? A lumberjack, all right? Yes. Royal and date are 2 of over 1,500 varieties of what useful tree that also give us coconuts?
Palm tree.
Right. A dog, musket, and soldier were toys that grew dusty after being left by what young boy told to blow his horn in a sentimental poem by Eugene Field? Answer or let it go. Little Boy Blue. A dumb waiter, swivel chair, and storm windows are all inventions developed by what third U.S. president?
Thomas Jefferson.
That's it. In order to see the Parthenon and Erechtheum, examples of Greek architecture, you would visit the Acropolis, the ancient religious center of what city?
Athens.
Right. The House of Representatives and the House of Councilor are the political entities that make up what Japanese legislative body whose name suggests the regimen of a calorie counter?
Pass.
It is called the Diet. Sculptors might discuss Brancusi, but collectors of what type of musical instruments talk about Amati, Guarneri, and Stradivari?
Violin.
That's it. You would associate the phrases Peace Corps, New Frontier with what man who was the youngest ever elected president of the United States?
Teddy Roosevelt.
No, it was John F. Kennedy. So you end up with 140 points after that round. And it's back over to Chardon now. Brian, your turn for selection. We'll see what you come up with now for this time round, and it is literature. Dante scattered his enemies all over the Inferno, saving the very mouth of Satan for what disciple who betrayed Jesus?
Julius Iscariot.
Yes. Should all violence be banned on TV, networks would have to cancel any performance of what Shakespearean play, which ends with the murder of all the main characters of the castle in Elsinore? All right. Brian?
Hamlet.
Right. You don't need your buzzers now. Dostoevsky wrote Notes from the Underground, but Arthur Miller's play title spoke of a view from what above-ground structure that once stood across the River Kwai?
Bridge.
Bridge. If we accept the very word of Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, what American patriot uttered the lyrical line, 1 if by land, 2 if by sea?
Paul Revere.
Right. If 2 fictional characters wish to be married, they would find which of the following duly authorized to perform the ceremony? Jay Gatsby, George Babbitt, or Arthur Dimmesdale?
Babbitt.
Nope, Dimmesdale. Do you remember the adjective Johann Weiss chose to describe the Robinson family in the title of his famous story? You'd know their nationality, which was what?
Swiss.
Yes. The Octopus is a novel about the railroad industry by Frank Norris, but his book, The Pit, concerns speculators who tried to corner the market on what form of grain?
Wheat.
Wheat is right. Perhaps Tennyson was anticipating the faces popping out of the Laugh-In wall when he wrote The Walls Have Ears in what series of poems about King Arthur?
Pass.
Idols of the King is the answer. We end up with 140 points for Chardon after the round. Now it's back over to Firelands from Oberlin. And Jennifer, anytime you're ready, we'll find out what it's going to be. And Says Who is the category that you have selected. A new birth of freedom are words of timeless appeal, but they were uttered by Abraham Lincoln in November 1863 as part of a speech made at what battlefield in Pennsylvania?
Gettysburg.
Right. They had the intelligence of Italians, but not their vivacity, was poet Edward Lear's opinion of the inhabitants of what Mediterranean island that was the birthplace of Napoleon?
Corsica.
Right. Only science will deliver man from his present gloom, were the optimistic words of what Russian scientist famous for his studies of conditioned reflex and experiment with salivating dogs?
Pavlov.
Right. And there no substitute for victory comes from one American general who was supreme commander in the Pacific in World War II and military governor of Japan?
MacArthur.
Right. I'd rather be right than president is a famous statement from what 19th century Kentucky statesman in which he placed civic virtue ahead of political ambition?
Pass.
Henry Clay. The years between 50 and 70 are the hardest was an observation by one Anglo-American poet who also claimed April as the cruelest in his poem, The Wasteland. No? T.S. Eliot. Public Hospital for Persons of Insane and Disordered Minds was the full name of one of the first American mental hospitals built in 1771 in what city that was then called the colonial capital of Virginia?
Richmond.
Williamsburg. What you don't want done to yourself, don't do to others, was the negative formulation of the Golden Rule in the writings of what Chinese wise man whose teachings have lasted 25 centuries?
Confucius.
Is absolutely right, and you end up with 160 points after the round. We'll be right back with the time capsule round after this message for the Illuminating Company in Ohio.
Decisions, decisions. The world is full of them because the world is full of electronics, helping us do our work, making life easier, warmer, cooler, brighter. Each button you push is like making a decision to use electricity. How much to use and what will it cost? The answers are in here. The electric decision maker. The decision maker lets you choose how much you want to spend doing each job. For instance, it tells you can watch an hour of television for 3 cents. And how much an hour of lighting costs. Or heating a room for 2 hours. Everything from air cleaners to walk pans. Even though it's only about $2 a day for an average house, you should know the exact cost of running your home better electrically. The electric decision maker. A handy way to make better decisions. Write or call the electric company for your free copy.
Students appearing on tonight's show will receive a photograph of their team as they appear on the show and also a special Academic Challenge T-shirt.
Welcome back to Academic Challenge, and when we recap our team scores on your screen now, Paul will tell us all about the rules for the upcoming capsules round.
We now have a special round of 2-part video questions. Each pair of questions is keyed to a clip from a historical newsreel. Teams will be in direct competition. Each part of the 2-part question is worth 10 points, and there is a 10-point penalty for incorrect answers. Don't forget to hold your buzzer down if you wish to answer.
Okay, Paul, thank you very much, and let's go right to it now and have our first video. Here we go. In 1945, Franklin Roosevelt met with a king who had named an entire country for himself. Identified as oil-rich Arab country whose capital is Riyadh. All right, Firelands.
Saudi Arabia.
That's it. Now, on the same video, this meeting took place aboard a U.S. Navy cruiser named for what Massachusetts town that is also the middle name of our second Adams president? Coventry.
Quincy.
Quincy is right. All right, here's our second video. In 1967, Lyndon Johnson became the first president to name a black American to the Supreme Court. The nominee was what civil rights lawyer who remains an associate justice of the court? Coventry.
Thurgood Marshall.
That is right. And the second question, same video. The great-grandson of a slave, Thurgood Marshall, had gained national attention in 1954 when he presented the case for the plaintiffs in what historic school desegregation suit? Firelands.
Brown versus the Board of Education.
That is it. And here's our third video tonight. Pablo Picasso was acclaimed as perhaps the most prolific and imaginative artist of the 20th century. Although he lived most of his life in France, he was actually born in what Iberian country? Coventry.
Spain.
Is right. And early in his career, Picasso worked with the artist Georges Braque to create what modern style or ism inspired by squares and three-dimension Chardon?
Cubism.
Cubism is it. And that's it for the video round. We'll be back for our final grab bag round after this message for Ohio Edison and the Illuminating Company.
The day the electricity came. A day long awaited by millions of people just a few generations ago.
They're here! Mom!
It brought daylight to their nighttime, replaced the ice in ice boxes, and linked them to the whole world with an amazing invention called radio.
And no matter what wonders American ingenuity brought to light, there was always electricity there to make it go. Now there's a microwave oven next to the icebox, VCRs for our TVs, computers in our homes, and satellites to tie our lives together. But one thing stays the same. Electricity is still the power that makes our world go. And we're working to make sure there'll always be enough. Electricity. It was the power of the future then, and still is today.
Now the teams face their final competition as we move along to our grab bag. But first of all, let's recap the scores and find out how we stand. And we have Chardon in third place with 150 points. In second place is Coventry with 170, and Firelands barely in the lead with 180. This is almost a tie, really. We go from 150 from third place to 180 for the first, and this will do it. In the grab bag now, teams gain 20 points for each correct answer, and if you fail to answer, 20 points are deducted. Okay, let's go now with question number 1. Alan Drury, author of Advise and Consent, recently published a novel whose title identifies what huge building that is headquarters for the Defense Department. Coventry.
Pentagon.
Right. The American president is chosen by a college of electors, but the Pope is selected by a college of what high church official? Chardon was first.
Cardinal.
Yes. North American Eskimos have complained that they are not allowed to rub noses with the 4,000 Eskimos who still live in what cold region of the Soviet Union? Firelands.
Siberia.
Yes. The letter I for CIA stands for intelligence, but what does the I stand for in the communications agency USIA? Chardon.
Information.
Is right. The photoelectric effect may be easily demonstrated by bombarding cesium with light rays, which will cause it to give off electrons, protons, or neutrons. Coventry.
Electrons.
That's it. What is the largest prime factor of 77? Chardon.
11.
Right. Although the book claims to be for the desert people, a dramatic account of Noah and the flood is included in what holy writ of Islam? Coventry.
Quran.
Right. Signs proclaiming that shoplifting is a crime would not have deterred what young pickpocket from Dickens' Oliver Twist, so skilled he was called artful. Firelands.
The Dodger.
That's it. Ray Bradbury and Isaac Asimov might be amused to learn that on the Chinese calendar, they were both born in the year of what small primate found in Colobus and Rhesus varieties? Chardon.
Monkey.
Is right. Before opening on Broadway, many shows undergo changes of title. For example, Gangway was an early title for what Leonard Bernstein musical about rival street gangs? Chardon.
West Side Story.
Right. The tissue of plants that conducts water and minerals upwards from the root is the valine, pyrrole, or xylem?
Xylem.
Xylem.
Xylem is right. Even students who find math unpalatable should like number 3.1416 because it suggests what?
Pi.
Chardon? Pi is it. Jimmy Carter said that he became interested in Russian history when at the age of 12. He read what massive novel by Tolstoy about Russia? Coventry.
War and Peace.
Right. The word patriot suggests love of country, but what word was applied to the Hessians who fought for the British, indicating that they, Chardon?
Mercenaries.
Is right. When nuclear weapons were being developed at Los Alamos, New Mexico, the government gave the alias Eugene Farmer to what Italian-born physicist who had built the first nuclear reactor? Chardon?
Fermi.
Right. If clothes designers are successful this year, many women will be wearing suits named for what kind of African hunting party? Coventry.
Safari.
Yes. Marking the 110th anniversary of its publication, there is a new, lavishly illustrated edition of what Anna Sewell novel narrated by a horse? Firelands.
Black Beauty.
Right. A number that is the sum of its divisors may be described with what adjective that suggests it is flawless? Coventry.
Perfect.
Right. The man who owned Broadway is John McCabe's recent biography of what American showman who wrote the songs Over There and Give My Regards to Broadway? Coventry.
George M. Cohan.
That's it. And Intentional Mystery is the subtitle of a book by Thibault du Saint-Phal about what U.S. government banking system whose chairman of the board is Paul Volcker? Coventry.
FDLIC.
What was that?
FDLIC.
No, I need the Federal Reserve System. I'm sorry. To raise more money, England's Henry VIII had to debase the silver coinage by adding what other metal? Atomic number 29, which used to be the chief metal in U.S. pennies. Chardon.
Copper.
Right. The Truth is the English translation of what title of the Russian Communist official newspaper? Coventry.
Pravda.
Right. The title Two Gentlemen of Verona begins with a cardinal number, but what other Shakespeare comedy has a title beginning with an ordinal number? Firelands.
Twelfth Night.
Right. Alfred Nobel's will established 5 Nobel Prizes, but in 1969, a 6th Nobel Prize was added for work in what field of study whose major figures have included David Ricardo and Paul Samuelson? Coventry.
Economics.
That's right. The official London residence of the British Prime Minister is at what street number on Downing Street, Chardon?
10.
10 is it. even when brand new. What type of Chinese sailboat has a name? There's our final buzzer. All right, let's have a look now at our final scores and see who our winner is. We have Firelands with 260 points. Coventry, 330. They came from behind, and they did it. Chardon, our winner, with 370 points. Now take a look at our Super Bowl scoreboard now and see if tonight's winner has a big enough score to win a place for itself on the ladder. Did we do it with 370? Apparently we did not, so we still have St. Paul, Padua, and the Holy Name. We hope that you'll be with us again next week when we will bring you teams from Thomas Harvey High of Painesville. Also, Olmsted Falls High School will be with us, and Western Reserve of Berlin Center. This is Don Webster. Have a good week, and we'll see you next week at the same time.
Academic Challenge has been brought to you by the Illuminating Company and by Ohio Edison.
AMS meteorologist